Hi, I'm Eva from China. Welcome to my channel. You've probably heard this story 1,000 times already.
Collapse of Russia. Do you think that's something that's likely to happen?
One way or another is going to happen. Russia is an empire, and there is no room for empires in the 21st century. And the war will be won by Ukraine. The question is when.
But I'm going to make a pretty bold prediction today. China will not let Russia collapse. Because for China, Russia isn't just another country. It's the giant neighbor next door. And if Russia collapses, China suddenly becomes the only enemy left on the planet. Not one of the enemies, the enemy, the one everyone else can unite against. That is probably the most frightening scenario for Beijing. So while Western media and even some Chinese commentators keep talking about Russia's inevitable decline, I think a lot of these narratives are based on a strategic illusion. If you are sitting inside the Pentagon, of course you want the world to believe Russia is about to collapse tomorrow. Russia's collapse would be a nice bonus for America, but for China, it could become a matter of survival. China cannot and will not let Russia fall, no matter how high the cost may be. First of all, is Russia really about to collapse? Well, Russia is not having an easy time for sure, but Ukraine's situation may actually be more fragile. The World Bank estimates Ukraine's poverty rate has reached nearly 37%, while reconstruction costs are estimated at several times the country's GDP. And despite years of sanctions, Russia's economy never actually collapsed. Trade shifted toward China, toward India, toward the global south. Life became harder, but Russia did not fall apart. So the real picture is, neither side can knock out the other, but Russia still has greater strategic depth, and the final result may depend largely on China, implicitly. Why China cannot afford a Russian defeat? Because if Russia loses, a whole chain reaction starts. The first consequence is NATO's guns would eventually point entirely at China. Before the Ukraine war, Europe still had a vague goal called strategic autonomy. France and Germany occasionally talked about becoming something more than America's junior partner, for which China can be of some help. Then the war happened, and NATO suddenly found a new purpose. Russia is defined as the existential threat, and China's relationship with Russia is increasingly portrayed as a political or military alliance. So now the goal is to contain Russia, contain China, contain both at the same time. Now imagine Russia actually loses, Putin is removed and a new government comes in. Do you think that government will still be pro-China? Probably not. It will likely move closer to America, Europe, or at least away from Beijing. If Russia itself fragments into competing factions, Beijing might try supporting a friendly group, but that's not easy. China has a lot of experience building factories in other countries, but not much experience building foreign government. America is probably much better at this game. And once Russia stops tying down NATO resources in Europe, America can shift even more military attention toward the Indo-Pacific. The strategic pressure on China will skyrocket immediately. All the fence-sitters will start running back into America's camp. Today, many countries don't simply choose between China and America. They are choosing between two broader camps, America and Europe on one side, China and Russia on the other. Remove Russia from the equation and the balance changes overnight. It's not just that China cannot afford to lose Russia. China actually has the ability to keep Russia in the game. Russia is already China's largest energy supplier. The two countries are connected through oil pipelines, gas pipelines, nuclear energy projects, Arctic LNG developments, and huge infrastructure networks. China buys, Russia sells, both sides benefit. The relationship is deeply complementary. Trade between the two countries reached roughly $245 billion. There is also technology. Russia still possesses enormous strength in mathematics, engineering, military technology, and scientific research. China dominates large-scale manufacturing, AI deployment, industrialization, and commercial applications. Together, they fit surprisingly well. And China doesn't need to send a single soldier to the battlefield. No tanks, no missiles. Simply continuing normal trade, energy cooperation, technology exchange, and financial settlements in RMB outside the SWIFT system already helps Russia survive. China is under pressure for sure, but for a superpower, you don't have to be on the battlefield, but you do have to participate in the war. Helping Russia stay at the table is really about making sure China doesn't end up sitting alone in the corner. But what's the price? Just because China can help Russia survive doesn't mean China itself is safe. The price of saving Russia can be very high. For the last few decades, China's economic rise was built largely on cooperation with the West. Western consumers, Western technology, and Western capital all played an important role in China's development. Shifting toward Russia sounds simple in theory, but in reality, it requires enormous effort. It means rebuilding supply chains, finding new markets, and replacing relationships that took decades to build. Some of those foundations simply cannot be replaced overnight. And the closer China moves toward Russia, the more sanctions, restrictions, and technology blockades it is likely to face from the West. The problem is that China is not exactly in its best condition to do this. China today is full of contradictions. The property sector is still struggling, consumer confidence remains weak, local governments are facing a huge debt crisis, growth is slowing, the economy is still facing an overall bottleneck. Social inequality is at an all-time high. Yet, the high-tech sector is booming like crazy, which may not be sustainable because the government is heavily involved. It pushes up high-tech stocks with government funds and is building AI infrastructure, including data centers, just like highways and railways, using taxpayers' money without permission, of course. And all of this intervention will turn the country into a giant machine optimized for competition and power, and will probably make a small part of the population incredibly wealthy in the short term, while many others struggle with lower incomes, unstable jobs, and a growing uncertainty about the future. This literally means the government is transferring ordinary people's money into the pockets of the super rich instead of creating new social wealth. And if the AI bubble bursts, the whole society bears the loss while the super rich walk away. To make the machine even stronger, the government tightens control wherever it believes doing so benefits the machine. For example, it sees technology as everything now, so it encourages universities to close down liberal arts and focus on STEM. It discourages people from investing outside China in the hope of keeping more capital inside the country. This is deeply worrying to me. More and more people feel deprived, frustrated, and even rebellious in some way, saying that whatever the government doesn't want you to do is probably the best thing to do. Most Chinese people have already passed the stage where money or survival is everything. People are looking for meaning in life, self-esteem, personal fulfillment, and long-term happiness. Meanwhile, the government tries very hard to guide or influence people's aspirations so that they fit into its grand narratives about national strength and strategic competition. Much of the propaganda feels outdated. If the system cannot adapt to those needs, cracks may begin to appear. History shows that great powers are rarely destroyed by foreign enemies. Most of the time, they collapse from within. The real challenge for China is whether its own system can continue producing confidence, opportunity, and social stability under increasing pressure from the outside.